It all began with a leisurely Wednesday morning walk across my land. 20 acres of patchy, weed-covered soil, strewn with old crates and construction gear I'd been meaning to sort out for the past 6 months. I wasn't in a hurry. The property was mine, fully paid, located just beyond the eastern boundary of Willow Creek, a polished HOA community where the lawns were always unnaturally vibrant and the neighbors' smiles seemed a bit too rehearsed. I wasn't part of their association, never had been, never intended to be. My land was zoned for business, just outside the HOA's jurisdiction, and I cherished that freedom. No pastel-colored rulebooks or neighborhood group chat nonsense for me. It was meant to stay that way. So, you can imagine my shock when I nearly spilled my tea spotting the first sign stapled to the rusty chain-link fence. Overflow parking for Willow Creek Harvest Fest. It read, with a bold blue arrow pointing straight at my property. At first, I chuckled. Surely, this was a mistake. Maybe some teenager's prank or a misread GPS pin. I tore the sign down, balled it up, and continued my walk. But then I saw another, this one nailed into the dirt near the northern corner, half covered in loose sand. Then a third, zip-tied to a utility pole by the HOA's entrance. 3 signs, all directing people to my land. I called my site manager, Jake, who was unloading lumber from a trailer that morning. "You see these signs?" I asked. "Yeah, meant to tell you," he replied. "Some HOA woman and a few kids were putting them up at dawn. Mentioned something about festival parking." My stomach sank. I knew exactly who he meant. Susan Caldwell, 62, HOA president, self-styled neighborhood queen, and professional meddler. She'd once slipped a typed note under my Jeep's wiper because I'd parked an inch too close to her prized rosebushes during a supplier meeting. I hadn't even touched her property line. So, I did what any irritated, tax-paying New Mexican would do. I dialed her number. The first 5 seconds of the call were peak Susan. Syrupy sweet, overly polished, clearly practiced. "Oh, David. So glad you reached out. I was hoping we could sync up on logistics for Friday." "Logistics?" I asked, voice flat. "For the Harvest Fest," she chirped. "We're expecting a big crowd this year, and we're so grateful you're letting us use that open lot by the east gate for parking. It'll really ease the traffic." "Susan," I said slowly, "that land's not open. It's not for parking. It's my property." A pause followed, long enough for me to picture her clutching her planner and pursing her lips. "Well, of course," she said. "But it's just sitting there, all dirt and debris. Everyone assumes it's community space. We've already printed flyers and maps." "Unprint them," I snapped. "David," she said, switching to that condescending tone people use before saying something absurd. "I get that you're touchy about ownership, but the community needs this. It's just one weekend. Think of it as a gesture of goodwill." "Goodwill for a neighborhood I'm not part of?" I shot back. "I pay taxes. I maintain that lot. I've had vandalism before. You didn't ask. You didn't even warn me." Her tone turned icy. "You're being unreasonable, David. This is about the greater good." I hung up. By the next morning, the signs were back. New ones, glossy, laminated, tied to traffic cones. My lot was now the official overflow zone. That afternoon, I saw a post on the Willow Creek HOA's social media page, forwarded by a friend who lived nearby. It included an aerial photo of my land, captioned, "Big thanks to our generous neighbor for opening this space for the Harvest Fest." I stared at it, then grinned. If Susan wanted to treat my land like a parking lot, fine. She was about to learn what commercial use really meant. Friday morning hit like a dust storm. By 7:30, I was already drenched in sweat, moving construction materials to the back of the lot before the heat became unbearable. The town was alive. Music drifting from the HOA's central plaza a few streets over, kids shouting, dogs yapping, golf carts buzzing like this was some upscale resort. I figured I had an hour before anyone tried anything foolish. I was wrong. By 8 o'clock, a silver SUV rolled up to my gate, festooned with festival flags and a couple inside wearing HOA-branded hats. They drove through the open fence like it was their driveway, parked sloppily near a pile of bricks, and hopped out like they were at a mall. I approached, stunned. "Excuse me," I said. "This is private property." The woman barely looked up. "Oh, Susan said it's fine to park here." "She didn't ask me," I replied. "I own this." The man paused, mid-unloading a cooler. "It's just for today, though, right? You're not using it." I didn't have the patience to argue. I warned them about loose nails and headed to my trailer to grab my phone. 10 minutes later, there were at least 20 vehicles on my lot. Sedans, pickups, a minivan with a tarp bungeed over the windshield like it was a tailgate party. People were unloading picnic chairs, tables, even a portable speaker blaring pop music. I watched kids dart through stacks of rebar, one nearly tripping over a jagged pipe. Two guys dragged out a massive charcoal grill, setting it up next to my storage shed. Then I saw it. A long gash across my green shipping container, paint scraped, dented like someone had reversed into it. Probably the red truck I'd seen barreling through, loaded with festival gear. That was it. I called the sheriff's office. The dispatcher was polite but unenthusiastic. "Is there a disturbance?" "They're trespassing," I said. "Dozens of cars. No permission, property damage." "Sounds like a civil issue, sir. Unless there's immediate danger, you'll need to file a report and handle it legally." "They're on my land," I pressed. "Private property dispute," she repeated. I hung up, fuming, staring at my phone. This wasn't a mix-up anymore, it was an invasion. Outside, the air smelled of burgers and charcoal. Someone was handing out wristbands like this was an official venue. A kid was caught urinating behind my tool shed. A group of women posed for photos against my backhoe like it was a tourist attraction. I approached a woman whose SUV was parked crookedly across 2 rows. "This is private property," I said. She smiled, eyes glued to her phone. "Susan cleared it. It's just for the fest. We'll tidy up." "You dented my container," I said, pointing. She didn't look. "Oh, sorry, it's just old equipment, right?" She turned away, scrolling. By noon, nearly 80 cars filled the lot. Pop-up tents sprouted. Kids tossed a football near exposed concrete forms, and someone had plugged in a portable fan. I hadn't even run power lines out here yet. I sat on my trailer steps, livid, wanting to yell but knowing half these people were out-of-towners who didn't even realize they were trespassing. Susan hadn't shown her face, probably sipping lemonade at the HOA tent, congratulating herself for solving the parking problem. I started recording wide shots, license plates, narration of the damage, litter, and reckless behavior. Then I took a deep breath. If they wanted to treat my land like a business, they'd get a business, one I controlled, and it was going to cost them. By Saturday morning, my lot looked like a landfill. Empty cups, candy wrappers, tire ruts etched into the dirt. A flip-flop, a broken folding chair, and a stroller, thankfully empty, abandoned near my shed. The grill crew had dumped their ashes in a ditch near my lumber stack, leaving scorch marks. I hadn't slept much, too busy scheming. By 6:30 a.m., a crew of contractors I'd called in arrived. By 9:00, they were digging trenches and leveling ground along the property's front. By noon, we'd installed posts for a motorized gate, heavy-duty with a keypad and reinforced rollers. I spent $6,000 that day, every cent a jab at Susan. By evening, it was done. A sturdy steel gate, just wide enough for one vehicle, flanked by temporary fencing with no trespassing signs every 15 feet. The gate bore bold text, "Private lot, parking $600 per vehicle, violators towed." A bright orange banner stretched across the top, no ambiguity. I was done playing nice. That night, I set up a folding table, a canopy, 2 chairs, and my old square reader. My cousin, Ethan, 24, with a knack for staying calm under pressure, agreed to help during peak hours, armed with a clipboard and a power bank. At 7:30 p.m., the first car approached, a gray minivan, a man in his 50s with kids in the back. He slowed, rolled down his window. "Can we still park for the fest?" I smiled. "Sure. $600, card or cash?" He laughed, thinking it was a joke, then saw the cameras. Real ones, red LEDs blinking on the gateposts. Ethan was logging plates on his tablet. 2 tow trucks idled nearby, drivers nursing energy drinks. "This serious?" the man asked. "Private commercial property," I said. "Used without permission yesterday, caused damage. Today it's $600 or park elsewhere." He stared, then drove off. The next car, a woman in her 60s, didn't argue, just handed over her card, muttering, "First payment logged." Within 30 minutes, we had a line of 12 cars. Some left, some yelled. One guy in a baseball cap called me a community leech and threatened to call the city. I offered receipts. He paid. By 10 p.m., we'd collected 8 full payments, 3 partials, and turned away 25 vehicles. The tow trucks hauled off 2 cars parked just outside. Their drivers HOA locals trying to outweight me. Then, right on cue, Susan appeared, storming up in a blazer and HOA-branded scarf, flanked by 2 board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Her glare could have melted steel. "This is outrageous, David," she snapped. "What do you think you're doing?" "Running a parking business," I said, pointing to the signs. "Legal, zoned, insured. You're fleecing residents for a community event." "No," I said coolly. "I'm charging trespassers for using my land. You sent them here. I'm just managing your logistics." "You're humiliating yourself," she hissed. "This isn't how Willow Creek works." "Exactly," I said. "I'm not in Willow Creek." She turned to a board member, a woman I'd seen in HOA emails, waving her planner like a weapon. "Call the county. This breaks zoning laws." I handed her a laminated folder, deed, zoning papers, temporary commercial use permit, and my security contract. Her jaw twitched as she skimmed it. "You did all this just to spite us," she said. "I did this because 80 cars trashed my land yesterday. No permission, no compensation." She opened her mouth, closed it, then stormed off, her entourage trailing. Ethan leaned over. "That went smoother than I thought." I nodded, watching another car peel away. "Wait till she gets the bill." By Monday, my lot looked like a fortress with a southwestern flair. The gate gleamed, signs were bolted down, and motion sensor lights flared at the slightest movement. I wasn't just making a point, I was building a case. The HOA's social media was a circus, screenshots flooding in from friends inside the community. Susan was in full damage control mode, calling my actions predatory and divisive. One resident labeled me a capitalist vulture. I saved that one. It's not often you get villain status. But I knew Susan wasn't done. By Tuesday, a certified letter arrived, legal letterhead, a petition for a temporary injunction to block commercial activity during community-designated events. Her claim: my gate disrupted communal access and endangered families. I nearly choked laughing. The only thing I disrupted was her delusion that my land was her playground. I sent the letter to my lawyer, Maria Torres, who wore turquoise earrings with her suits and had a stare that could freeze a rattlesnake. She read it, smirked, and said, "She filed in the wrong county. You're not in Willow Creek. She's got no case." We filed a motion to dismiss, attaching a detailed account of Susan's overreach, photos of festival-goers grilling next to my lumber, and evidence of property damage. The court threw it out in 48 hours. Susan's legal gambit crashed and burned. Next came the county inspector, a tired-looking guy named Tim in a polo shirt, clutching a clipboard. "Got a complaint about unpermitted structures," he muttered, eyeing my gate. "Gate's legal," I said, handing him a permit packet. "Fencing, signs, all approved." He shrugged. "Figured. But some woman called 5 times, said the gate's blocking traffic." I walked him through the property lines, showed the zoning docs, even let him test the gate's keypad. "Looks solid," he said. "Cleaner than most sites I see." We shook hands and he left. That night, an HOA email blast went out, titled Urgent, Addressing Neighborhood Tensions. It was pure spin, no names, but accusations of profiteering and undermining community spirit. It ended with a poll. Should Willow Creek pursue legal action to ensure responsible use of nearby properties? Screenshots showed 65% voted no. Turns out, not everyone loved shelling out $600 to park under tow truck scrutiny. By Thursday, my inbox had a new tone. Residents reached out quietly, asking about pre-booked parking for future events. One wanted to rent space for a family reunion. Another asked about PayPal. Susan stayed silent, at least online, but I knew she was plotting. Friday night, the festival wrapped. Tents gone, music faded, HOA page quiet. For the first time in days, no cars idled at my gate. No one haggled for a discount. No Susan marching around like she owned the place. I sat under my floodlights with a cold soda, exhaling. Too soon. At 2:47 a.m., my phone pinged. Motion alert, gate camera. The feed showed 3 figures in dark jackets moving quickly. One held a pry bar, another a pair of wire cutters, the third a fuel can. I cursed, pulled on my boots, and triggered my security app, alerting my hired security team and the sheriff. I planned for this, call it Plan E, nighttime saboteurs. Within 5 minutes, a security truck roared in, spotlights blazing. A siren blipped, and the trio panicked. One dropped the fuel can. Another tripped over the fence wiring. The third ran into a mesquite bush. Deputies arrived, flashlights sweeping. I walked out, coffee in hand, pulse racing but face steady. The pry bar lay beside a fresh dent in the gate's frame. The wire cutters hadn't breached the reinforced chain link. I handed over the camera footage. Time-stamped, clear faces once the hoods came off. Know them? A deputy asked. I did. The tall one, sneering, was Susan's cousin, Ryan Caldwell. The stocky one in a torn HOA shirt was Mark Jensen, a board member who'd once boasted at a community potluck that no one outsmarts Susan. The third was a nervous teen, probably dragged along. I didn't know him. The deputies collected statements, photos, and the singed rags near the gate. Likely an arson attempt. I laid out the full story. Susan's harassment, unauthorized signs, false claims, failed injunction, and now this. I showed a text from an unknown number, sent post-injunction. Enjoy your gate while it lasts. The timing was too perfect. All 3 were arrested, trespassing, vandalism, attempted arson. The next day, I filed a civil suit. $3 million for damages, trespass, attempted arson, and distress. Maria stacked the paperwork like she was building a monument, naming Susan, Mark, and the HOA board for negligence and complicity. We included festival flyers, Susan's emails, and her public comments painting me as the bad guy. In court, Maria was a force, calm, lethal, armed with every email, photo, and video I'd gathered. Our suit targeted Susan personally, Mark for his role, and the HOA for enabling it all. The $200,000 claim wasn't just symbolic. It was calculated. The courtroom smelled of nerves and Susan's lavender perfume. She sat, polished but tense, jaw clenched. Maria laid out the timeline. Susan's false parking claims, the flyers, the 80-car invasion, the dented shed, the illegal grilling, the failed injunction, the cleared inspection, and the vandalism caught in 4K, Ryan and Mark with a gas can. Susan's lawyer tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, claiming the signs were community suggestions and the vandals acted alone. Then we played the video. Ryan chuckling, Mark muttering, "Hurry!" before he sees. The room went quiet. Susan's face didn't crack, just froze, like she knew she was trapped. The judge ruled by noon. Full judgment for me. The HOA was negligent. Susan liable for damages and defamation. Mark and Ryan facing criminal charges separately. The kicker? Susan was ousted as HOA president on the spot. When she tried to speak, the judge shut her down. Enough, Ms. Caldwell. Maria whispered. That was a massacre. I didn't smile. Just watched Susan shuffle out, her lawyer trailing. Residents reached out post-trial. Some apologized, others were relieved. A retired teacher stopped me in town, saying, "We've wanted her reined in for years." Susan's reign wasn't her first overreach, just the first caught. 6 weeks later, my lot was transformed. Fresh gravel, marked lanes, a sign reading Creek Lot Parking and Events. Private venue, book ahead. A smaller plaque noted, $600 spot fee or $25,000 rental. The business was legit LLC, insured, permitted for 200 vehicles. The new HOA president, Elena Marquez, a no-nonsense ex-teacher, met me under my canopy with coffee. "We've got a spring fair coming," she said. "Let's avoid last time's mess." I handed her a rate sheet, $25,000 per day, $6,000 deposit, plus insurance. She grinned. "Susan would have had a stroke." "She did," I said. We signed a contract for the fair, clean, legal, wired deposit. The event ran smoothly. QR codes, marked lanes, hired teens in vests directing cars. Susan watched from her yard, her roses wilting, mailbox sagging. A teen attendant whispered, "That the lady who tried to torch your gate?" I nodded. "Was president. Now she's just Susan." The day was calm, the money clean. As the sun set, Elena shook my hand. "This could be a good partnership." I grinned. "An expensive one." A latecomer pulled up, asking to park. I pointed to the sign. $600 real? He asked. "Venmo works," I said. He paid.